U.S. President Donald Trump at the center of what is shaping up to be another chaotic day in this ongoing trade war. The automotive sector, the target this evening.
And the Trump talk continues on the campaign trail. We're going to tell you what the party leader said today.
And a 15-year-old struck and killed near a Scarborough school today. We'll hear from local residents this evening. Some say speeding has been a major issue in that area.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. We are still following big news out of Washington tonight. In moments, U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to announce tariffs on auto imports.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirming earlier today Trump will announce the tariffs. No details were provided about how the tariffs will impact Canadian automakers. It's also not clear whether the tariffs will apply to vehicles made under the terms of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade. Once again, President Trump in moments will be announcing tariffs on auto imports. CP24 will bring it to you live when it happens.
And we are standing by with reaction to whatever the U.S. president announces. Let's go live now to CP24's Sija Liu at Queen's Park for more on how Ontario could respond. Sija, the premier is keeping a close eye on this announcement.
Yeah, if you'll recall, he went down to Washington with federal ministers just a few weeks ago, and he said that was an excellent meeting. He felt very confident and optimistic, and this was after he pulled back his surcharge on electricity sent to the U.S. But we are standing outside Premier Doug Ford's office right now, where he's expected to give an update, a comment imminently on these tariffs that we're hearing is coming on auto imports from the U.S. So we're supposed to get this update from President Donald Trump any second now, but we don't know exactly the scope of these tariffs. We just know that they will be on automobile imports. As for where we stand right now, because there has been a lot of back and forth with these tariffs, Trump earlier this month had said he would implement a partial pause on these economy-wide tariffs. This was after he had a conversation with the big three automakers, Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors, where Trump indicated he was receptive to pleas from these automakers that these tariffs would impact their business. But in terms of tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25%, that went ahead earlier this month. And that, of course, has a trickle effect on these automakers as well. Here's the latest that we're hearing from some experts in the industry. Take a listen.
The president will hold a press conference in the Oval Office today at 4:00 p.m. to announce tariffs on the auto industry. And I will leave that to him to make that announcement later.
So that was White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. That is the only thing we're hearing about this press conference coming up. It was supposed to be at 4 o'clock, but has since been delayed. But we are here outside Premier Doug Ford's office. And again, he went down to Washington just a few weeks ago and he felt optimistic. So we're hoping to get an update from him and some reaction to what's next here when it comes to the Ontario response. Back to you.
All right, Sija Liu, keeping a close eye on the story from Queen's Park. Thanks for this, Sija. And for an American perspective, we turn to CTV News political analyst Eric Ham, who joins us from Washington this hour. Eric, thank you for joining us. What are you watching for, and what does it say to you that we still haven't heard from Donald Trump? He was expected to speak about an hour ago.
Yeah, that's right. But we know that there was also another event taking place at the White House that the president would be also attending. And because we know that Donald Trump typically is usually late for things like this, so it was expected that this would be pushed back. But when you look at where the markets are today, particularly how many of these automakers have seen their stock price fall to just today, we're expecting that this could be equally calamitous for many of these companies, the big three, including Tesla. And so Donald Trump making this announcement on the heels of those additional reciprocal tariffs that are expected to go into place next week. What we're seeing here is Donald Trump, who's been on again, off again with this trade war, now seems to be actually standing back on in terms of these tariffs. And for those auto executives who thought they had a reprieve, we now see that the clock has struck midnight on that reprieve for those many companies.
Okay, so Eric, the White House, we know, is doing damage control over the leaked war plan scandal. Do you think Trump's tariff announcement today is an attempt to shift the focus a bit? Maybe give the world something else to talk about? Could this even be sort of a modern-day wag the dog situation?
That's a really interesting thought. But again, I think given the fact that the president simply doesn't see what took place in terms of those detailed classified plans being released, he doesn't see that as a major issue. So I don't think he's going to see the need to have to try to switch or change the subject. I think what we have to recognize when it comes to tariffs, President Trump has always seen tariffs as not just a tool to try to boost and juice the U.S. economy, but he also sees it as a way to actually bend the will of many countries, very much like what we've already seen from India, that is now actually considering dropping tariffs on $23 billion of goods that go into that particular country every year. So I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is hoping that he can actually influence other nations perhaps with this tariff. But again, when you're talking about an industry that has a 10% impact on the GDP of the country itself, this is a huge gamble the president is taking.
A huge gamble for sure, Eric. Do you think the U.S. president will offer any kind of reprieve to automakers and products under the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico? What are you watching for there?
Well, I think so much will be determined by what we actually hear from the president. And more importantly, I think why he thought today would be a good day to actually make this announcement, especially when we know that the tariffs are actually going into effect next week. And given that we've already seen trillions of dollars in a sell-off on the markets and how now there's a growing concern about a recession, why Donald Trump thought today would be the optimal time to make this announcement. I think there's still more that we need to hear from the president directly. Now, we know that when Donald Trump is speaking about these tariffs, we know that much of the information that he uses is actual disinformation. But again, I think there's so much that we need to know in terms of what his thinking is and the rationale, which is always hard to glean from this president. But nevertheless, I think we need to hear directly from him when we're talking about tariffs on such a crucial industry to the U.S. and Canadian economy.
Okay, CTV News political analyst Eric Ham. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 5:07. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjua and CIA Bois. Adj.
Well, Bakari and Lena just been watching a couple of problems, and a problem that just got moved over to the shoulder, but was creating a bit of a delay. If you were on the 401 westbound, trying to get onto the ramp that takes you onto the 403, 410 via the express, we have the stall. It was blocking the right lane, but the good news, it is all off to the side, and that little backlog I was seeing, no longer the case. 401 on the eastbound side, still busy in sections from Renfort to Warden. More delays further east if you're traveling in towards Durham. Northbound on the Don Valley Parkway had some problems on the approach to Eglinton. Was a collision in the right lane that also cleared, and I'll keep the good news rolling. We had some problems on the Gardner westbound. Was there at the end of the on-ramp up from Spadina. We had the right lane blocked with a stall. That stall also cleared. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Police are investigating after a 15-year-old girl was struck and killed in a crosswalk near a school in Scarborough this morning.
Okay, CP24 Steve Ryan joins us live from the scene. Steve.
Yeah, such a tragic story, Bakari and Alina. Please tell us about this happened just before 10 o'clock this morning. It happened at a T intersection in a school zone on Brimwood Boulevard and Bridley Drive. Brimwood runs east and west. It's a posted 40-kilometer-per-hour zone, and Bridley runs north of Brimwood, and it's a newly posted 30-kilometer-per-hour zone. Police tell us that a 15-year-old student was on her way to school this morning, and she was crossing within a designated crosswalk at that intersection when a vehicle traveling eastbound along Brimwood made a left turn onto Bridley and struck and killed this 15-year-old, and she was pronounced deceased here at the scene. So it's an accident now being conducted by the reconstruction team from the Toronto Police, and they will determine the cause of this collision. Was it mechanical failure? Was there some sort of medical episode? Was it driver error? Or was there another reason why this driver did not see this 15-year-old as she crossed within the pedestrian crosswalk? Here's more from Toronto Police, who we heard from earlier today. That's us.
When officers arrived, they learned that a 15-year-old female pedestrian had been struck by a black Honda. Our emergency services, paramedics attended on scene, and despite best efforts, the pedestrian was pronounced.
A Toronto Police Departmental tow truck towed that vehicle away earlier this afternoon. That will be taken to a secure environment, a controlled environment where mechanics can go through that vehicle and see if there was any mechanical malfunction on that car, which may have contributed to this terrible tragedy. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, CP24, Steve Ryan, thanks. It's 5:10, 4 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Federal party leaders making their pitches to Canadians once again today, while also keeping an eye on what Donald Trump is planning when it comes to auto tariffs. We'll bring you the latest from the campaign trail coming up. Welcome back. The federal party leaders were talking about tax breaks and manufacturing jobs on the campaign trail today.
And CP24's Phil Perkins joins us live with the latest election promises. Phil.
Hey there, Bakari and Lena. Yeah, all those things plus the cloud of these ongoing tariffs brought down by U.S. President Donald Trump. Pierre Poilievre taking his new jet to Quebec, talked about these tariffs that Donald Trump continues to put on this economy. He said to, quote, knock it off, saying causing chaos in the markets, dislocating workers on both sides of the border, stop threatening Canada, stop talking about our sovereignty. But he also talked about senior citizens in their golden years, allowing them to make $10,000 more of tax-free income in their golden years of their life, up to $34,000 tax-free. He also talked about keeping retirement at age 65. Here's what he said about all that.
That Conservatives will put Canadian seniors first by allowing them the option to keep their RRSP invested and growing until up to age 73. This will allow more growth tax-free so that there's a bigger nest egg for the future. That means more control, more flexibility, more financial security. These savings, along with my major income tax cut, will mean seniors will bring home more of their pensions and paycheck.
Leader Mark Carney was in Windsor, where we know to make a vehicle, it crosses the border between Canada and the U.S. multiple times before it is finished. And he was talking about a $2 billion strategic response fund to these auto tariffs imposed by the U.S. government. He says this will protect jobs and also promises to increase manufacturing here. Here's more from the Liberal leader.
It will fortify the entire Canadian auto supply chain, from raw materials to finished vehicles. Because we're not just protecting the present, we're looking to build the future. We're creating new jobs. Under our plan, we will build an all-in Canada network for auto manufacturing components. Because on average, an auto part crosses that border, often through that bridge, over that bridge, 6 times before final assembly. And in a trade war, that's a huge vulnerability.
Yeah, you're already hearing about cars being way more expensive on both sides of the border. Jagmeet Singh was in Hamilton. He was talking about how he differentiates himself from Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. They have some new attack ads out there. But he also weighed in, much like the Conservative leader, about more supports for senior citizens.
We know that the impact of things getting more expensive is going to hit them even harder. So we want to plan to lift up seniors. So we want to double the disability credit, so the disability benefit, and that disability benefit needs to be increased. We want to double it, and then we want to increase the GIS. That's going to help a lot of seniors lift them out of poverty by increasing the GIS.
Party co-leader Jonathan Pedna was in Quebec. He was talking about allowing Canadians to make more money tax-free. Right now, it's capped at $16,000. They said if elected, they want to increase that to $40,000. They said that would save a lot of people, obviously, a lot of money in taxes, over $3,500 in that. Back to you guys.
All right, the economy is certainly the focus of this campaign because it impacts so many people. Phil, thanks so much. An incumbent Toronto MP is bowing out of the federal election.
Kevin Vuong, who represents the riding of Spadina-Fort York, says that he will not run for a second term. He was initially the Liberal candidate in the 2021 vote, but the party dropped him 2 days before Election Day over his failure to disclose a 2019 sex assault charge, which was later withdrawn. Vuong has been sitting as an independent. He says that his family informed his decision to not seek re-election, but that doesn't mean he will be withdrawing from public service.
And we're following breaking news now. U.S. President Donald Trump is announcing tariffs
back
on
just
auto
some of the money
imports.
that
Let's take you there now.
Taken from us by people sitting behind this desk or another desk that's not quite as nice, but they have their choice of 7, as you know. And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%. And basically, as you know, and as you've been seeing, not reporting as accurately as it should be reported because it's a massive story. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs. And I think also because of November 5th, the election, they're very happy. AI is coming back to levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's a new, sort of a new business, I guess, when you think about it. But it's plants are going up all over the United States, and many of them have already been started. We're getting early electricity taken care of. We're getting permits very quickly for them, and we're going to make their life very happy. They're coming in with tens of billions of dollars. Individual plants will cost 10, 15, even $20 billion. We're going to let them build electricity generating plants along with their plant, and they can't even believe it. And we're going to get them very quick permits, as I've done always. I did that in Louisiana with 2 LNG plants. I got them one permit in 1 day after waiting 14 years and the other one in 1 week after waiting for 12 years. But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country. And Indiana, the great state of Indiana, I love Indiana. Honda is building one of the biggest plants anywhere, and they've just started. They wouldn't have done it without this. In all cases, they wouldn't have done it without what we're doing. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant. But their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. But others will come into our country and build, and they're already looking for sites. They're looking for mostly sites. They don't want to take the old buildings that are empty and falling down. They want to build new, and there's tremendous action. There is likewise for other companies and countries like the chip making process. Your chip bill was a disaster done by Biden. All he does is give tremendous amounts of billions of dollars to chip companies that will do nothing with the money. They're not going to use the money here. They're going to just keep it. They have plenty of money. The one thing they have is they have a lot of money. In our case, all we're doing is saying you can't come in unless you build here. And the largest chip company by far is manufacturer from Taiwan is building here, and it'll give us almost 40% of the chip market just with that. They're spending almost $200 billion in the United States to build a plant, and they've almost started. They'll be doing much of the work in Arizona. So we have a lot of exciting things, but to me, this is one of the most exciting. Now, outside of one specific day, and that's Liberation Day. That's the real Liberation Day of America, and that's going to be in April 2nd, and I look forward to it. We'll have a little news conference. We'll talk about it, but this is very exciting. So we're signing a executive order today that's going to lead to tremendous growth in the automobile industry. As you know, the electric mandate that we did allows you to buy a car now with electric or gasoline-powered or hybrid. You can buy any car you want. We had it so that within a short period of time, you had to buy all electric, and the country could never provide the money necessary to build all of those power plants that you would need all over the country. As you know, in the Middle West, they built 8 power stations. That's like the size of this desk or smaller. And they ended up spending $9 billion on 8. And of the 8, 4 of them didn't work. And we're not doing that. So you can buy electric, or you can buy gasoline, or you can buy hybrid, or you can buy whatever you want to buy. And that's the way it should be. The market's going to determine that. And you're going to see prices going down, but it's going to go down specifically because they're going to buy what we're doing, incentivizing companies to, and even countries, but companies to come into America and build. And we're already setting records for new plants. I think the new plant number, the tally is just within a period of a few weeks. It's very large. I want to be accurate. It's very large. And I'd like to ask Will just to come and give some of the basics, and then I'll sign it, and it's off to the races. I think our automobile business will flourish like it's never flourished before. Yes, please, Will.
Thank you, sir. As you stated, we've prepared for your attention a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars and light trucks. This is in addition to tariffs that are already in place on those goods. In addition to, as you said, spurring increased domestic manufacture of cars and trucks, we expect that these tariffs will result in over $100 billion of new annual revenue to the United States of America in tariff revenue.
I think ultimately we could probably anywhere from $600 billion to $1 trillion will be taken in over the relatively short-term period, meaning a year from now, but starting right away. I think we'll go from 600 to $1 trillion within 2 years. And I think we'll be right from the beginning, we're going to be at a very high number, right from the beginning. And right from the beginning, you're going to have a lot of construction jobs, but you're also going to have a lot of automobile jobs. So this is very exciting, but it's also exciting because of what's happening with other aspects. We're going to be doing tariffs on pharmaceuticals in order to bring our pharmaceutical industry back. We don't make anything here in terms of drugs, medical drugs, different types of drugs that you need, medicines. It's in other countries, largely made in China, a lot of it made in Ireland. Ireland was very smart. We love Ireland. But we're going to have that. We're going to have lumber. We're going to free up some of our land. And you'll be able to meet a lot of other standards like fire cuts. If Los Angeles had fire cuts, which they didn't have, that's a gap of half a football field between areas. You wouldn't have had the fires. They would have been contained. But you have fire cuts. And by the way, you sell that wood for a lot of money, a lot of profit is made from that. But we're going to be doing lumber. We're freeing up our land so that we don't have to use outside sources of lumber. Energy, we're doing fantastically well at. You know, the energy prices have been coming down rapidly as we increase supply, and we've already done that. We have Chris and Doug are doing a fantastic job in that. That's Department of Energy and Department of Interior. And they're working together hand in hand because Interior has the land and Energy has the ability to do the drilling and do what they have to do. Our coal areas are going to be opened up for clean, beautiful coal. Germany's opening up many coal plants now. You know, they tried the wind and it didn't work. They almost went out of business. They almost went bankrupt. They tried wind, which is a disaster because it's too expensive and it doesn't look good, kills all the birds, a lot of problems. But Germany is now building a lot of coal plants. China is building one a week. Think of that. And they're using coal, which is very powerful. Coal is a very powerful energy. And we're opening up our coal mines again, and we're going to do, I call it beautiful, clean coal. The technology is so good now that coal can give you tremendous power at the same time. It can be very clean. but we're also obviously doing oil and gas and various other things. You can do pretty much whatever you want. We don't like the wind because we think it ruins the landscapes, the plains, ruins them, and it's got a lot of problems. It's also by far the most expensive energy. It looks horrible in the oceans. It's dangerous in the oceans in terms of navigation. And if you look at what's happening with whales, in one area, they lost 2 whales, like in 20 years, washed ashore. And this year they had 17 wash ashore. So there's something happened out there. There's something driving the whales a little bit loco, but they lost 2 in 20 years. And now they lost 17 in a short period of time. So it's something wrong out there. So this is very exciting. This is going to lead to the construction of a lot of plants, and in this case, auto plants. And you're going to see numbers like you haven't seen, both in terms of employment. It takes a little while. You're going to have great construction numbers initially, and then ultimately you're going to have a lot of people making a lot of cars. And one other thing, we have the Speaker of the House with us, who's doing a fantastic job. And where's Mike? And we're trying to get approved. Mike, thank you very much for being here. We're trying to get approved, if we can. If you borrow money to buy a car, you're allowed to deduct interest payments for purposes of income tax, but only if the car is made in America. So if the car is made in America, you get a loan, you can deduct the interest. That's a big saving. A lot of people in that part of the world, in terms of buying cars, a lot of them don't think in terms of deductions. People that think in terms of deductions are very wealthy people, but people are going to start understanding what a good deduction is all about. So when you get a loan to buy a car, and I think it's going to pay for itself. I don't think there's any cost. I think you're going to have so many cars built, but you're only going to get that deduction of interest if the car is made in the United States of America. So I'm going to sign this, and Mike, I hope you can get that, because I think it's going to be amazing in terms of the number of cars that are going to be made because of it. And I want to thank Howard Lutnick, our fabulous commerce chairman. That's what he is. He's a chairman. He's a very successful guy, a great guy. And we have a big day, Howard, coming up next week. It's going to be good. That's Liberation Day. That's going to be on the 2nd, and that's going to be reciprocal. And I think people will be impressed. We're going to be very fair. We're going to be very nice, actually. We have not been treated nicely by other countries, but we're going to be nice. So I think people will be pleasantly surprised, but it's going to make our country very rich, because we're the piggy bank that everybody steals from, and they've been doing it for many years, for decades, so we're not going to let it happen. So, but we're going to treat people very nicely.
Breaking news out of the Oval Office this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump announcing devastating tariffs on auto imports. Announcing a 25% tariff on all cars not made in the United States. And worth noting, no exceptions for vehicles made under the terms of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement on trade. Donald Trump says you can't come in here unless you build here. And there he is signing that executive order just moments ago.
Yeah, and Trump also mentioning that the U.S. has been losing all of their automotive plants to Canada and Mexico. Those plants will be coming back to the U.S. He cited Honda as one example. So coming up a little bit later on in the next half hour, we're going to be speaking with Flavio Volpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, about this. It's 5:30. This is Live at 5.
And stay with us as we keep a close eye on this breaking news out of the White House again. We just heard from the U.S. President Donald Trump announcing this 25% tariff on cars made outside of the U.S. This is going to be devastating for Canada's auto sector. Stay with us for reaction.
We're following breaking news out of the White House, where U.S. President Donald Trump has officially announced 25% tariffs on vehicles made outside of the U.S.
And Trump's attacks on the auto industry have been a hot topic for party leaders today. We're going to tell you more.
And a 15-year-old hit and killed near a school in Scarborough today. We're going to hear from local residents. Some say speeding has been a major issue in that area.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Okay, so we're following breaking news. U.S. President Donald Trump has just announced 25% tariffs on auto imports.
And he just made it official, signing an executive order. Let's go live to CP24's Sija Liu. She's at Queen's Park. And Sija, you're watching for the Premier's reaction.
That's right. We were standing outside the Premier's office in Queen's Park here, hoping he can give an update. If you'll recall, he was down in Washington, D.C., meeting with the U.S. Commerce Secretary just a few weeks ago regarding tariffs. He said it was a great conversation, but today, just moments ago, we heard from U.S. President Donald Trump that he will be imposing 25% tariffs on auto imports. So if a car, a light vehicle, is not made in the U.S., it will be taxed. Now, these 25% tariffs will be on top of any tariffs that are already in place. President Trump says this will help the U.S. economy, that it would lead to $100 billion in revenue from tariffs. And he's hoping that the cost of these taxes on companies would spur more production in the U.S., that they will move their plants into America and begin building from there. It was just last month that President Trump announced a 1-month pause on these auto tariffs, citing a conversation he had with the big three automakers, Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors, saying he understood that this would have negative impacts on their business. But it looks like today he is moving ahead with those auto tariffs, and this is coming a week before April 2nd, when he was expected to announce those reciprocal tariffs. Take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say in the Oval Office today.
So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant, but their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. But others will come into our country and build, and they're already looking for sites.
And the stock market was in the red today as we were learning this news. GM down 1.7%, Ford down 1.5%. But right now we are standing outside Premier Doug Ford's office, hoping to get a comment on this. As you know, he went down to Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago, feeling very optimistic. And now today, a different story with Trump moving ahead with those 25% tariffs effective. Now, back to you.
Yeah, effective immediately. Sija Liu reporting live from Queen's Park, again, awaiting Doug Ford's reaction to these devastating levies, a 25% tariff on all cars not made in the United States. And the U.S. president made that official just moments ago. Stay with us as we keep a close eye on this breaking news. In the meantime, let's switch gears and get a check on the drive and the evening commute with our traffic specialist, Adjoa Nsiayebwa. Hey, Adj.
Oh, hey, Lena. Yeah, at least sunshine is accompanying you. It's very slow on all of the major area highways, and sprinkle in the mix, a problem. We're dealing with a stall. This is on the eastbound lanes of the 401, just making your way past the 400 in the express. This stall does have that left lane blocked, so that's what's impacting and slowing down the commute from before Renforth. Northbound on the 427, it's pretty busy north and southbound between the 401 and the Gardner, strictly dealing with volume delays and delays on the Gardner, sunshine delays as well. Sun blinding the drive. Make sure shades are available. Very slow from Jarvis all the way towards Strawn. If your travel taking you towards Hamilton, outside of camera view on the eastbound 403, it's South Coat Road. Crews remain on scene of a collision that is blocking the right lane. Lena, Bakari, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Adj. Okay, the ongoing trade war with the U.S., it topped the agenda at City Hall today. The council has approved a plan to combat U.S. tariffs.
CTV's Natalie Johnson joins us live with those details. Natalie. CTV's Natalie Johnson in just a moment. Let's take you live to Scarborough now, where CP24 Steve Ryan is working on a fatal pedestrian who was struck as a child, a 15-year-old who was struck by a car in a school zone. Steve.
Yeah, such a tragedy, Lena. We heard today that a 15-year-old high school student was on her way to school just before 10 o'clock this morning when she was struck by a vehicle, and she was pronounced deceased at the scene here. So it's the T intersection where this fatality occurred, and that's Bradley Drive and Brimwood Boulevard in Scarborough. Brimwood Boulevard runs east and west. It's a school zone. In fact, this young girl was not too far away from her school. Sadly, she was crossing the street. That's a 40-kilometer-per-hour zone. Bridley, which is the street I'm on now, that runs north of Brimwood. It's a newly posted 30-kilometer-per-hour zone. The 15-year-old, according to police, was crossing the street within a designated crosswalk when the driver, a woman in her 40s, driving a black Honda, was driving east on Brimwood, made a left turn onto Bridley, and that's when the young woman was struck and killed. The car then mounted the curb on the east side of Bridley and then struck a tree. Now, we did hear from Toronto Police earlier on as well with regards to the update, and here's what they told us. Let's listen.
The driver is cooperating. As you see, Brimwood is not necessarily directly east-west, but the black Honda was traveling approximately easterly in an easterly direction on Brimwood, and they were making a left-hand turn onto Bridley Drive. That's what we know right now.
So are we going to break after this, guys?
Toronto Police Traffic Services are investigating this fatality, and they'll make a determination as to what caused this collision to occur. Was it driver error? Was it mechanical malfunction on the vehicle? Could it have been some sort of impairment? Or was there a medical episode? Or was there another reason why the driver did not see this 15-year-old as she crossed from the east side of Bridley over to the west side? All part of the investigation. And the car will be examined for any mechanical malfunctions as well. I'll send it back to you guys.
Okay, reporting live from Bridley and Brimwood, CP24's Steve Ryan. Steve, thank you. It's 5:39. This is Live at 5.
The Blue Jays are back in Toronto ahead of tomorrow's home opener. We're going to hear from the team as they look ahead to what is hopefully a successful season. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's lighten up the load a little bit. The Blue Jays are also set to open the season at home tomorrow.
CP24's Arda Zakarian joins us from Rogers Center as the boys of summer held a workout day. Arda.
Yes, they did. We saw them on the field doing their batting practice, and what a welcome to this brutal winter we've had, seeing the boys of summer work out, get ready for tomorrow. It was truly an amazing experience to be there on the field with them. You know, tomorrow we're going to see a sea of blue behind me. All the fans are going to come out for that home opener against the Baltimore Orioles. Now, typically, the Baltimore Orioles would be in better standing than the Blue Jays ahead of them because they won 91 of their games last year, but we have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., we have Bo Bichette, and we're going to have them for the entire year because this is our last year with them, unless, of course, the contract can be extended, but free agency happens for both of them after this year. So we got to make the most of their time here. That means that over the next couple of months, it's really important that the Blue Jays put their best foot forward, that they win, because it really dictates whether or not they're going to make it into the playoffs. Now, we had a chance to hear from a couple of the players. Alejandro Kirk, who is a catcher, he just inked a $58 million 5-year deal. He says he's really happy, excited, special moment for him, for his family. He's focused on winning. We heard from Jose Barrios. He is the opener for tomorrow. He's going to be the starting pitcher, and it's his third time that he's doing it with the Blue Jays, 5th time in his career, but he says he hopes he has another 3 times with the Blue Jays. We heard from the manager, John Schneider as well, who said that there's a really good mix of old veteran players and young ones. They have good camaraderie, good chemistry all together. They really get along, and they are looking forward again to winning, focusing their energy on that goal. We also heard from general manager Ross Atkins, who talked about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but I'll keep that for just a little bit. Here's more from John Schneider and Jose Barrios.
My expectations for this team are always the same. I think it's you want to make the postseason and you want to do better than we have in the postseason. That's number one. 2, no, I don't think it's individually characterized between players. This is 26 guys pulling in the same direction. And 3, I do not believe that this team is overly analytical. I think that is a brush that gets painted with us in a lot of organizations because of where the game is. But I do feel like we have found a really, really good blend of both. And if you're not using both, then you're not evolving with the game.
That first day is always first day. You always gonna feel that emotion, that feeling. But with experience, with the years, you learn how to manage yourself to go out there and keep doing your thing. Like I say, it's still there the first day. You're gonna feel the emotion, but right after you throw the first pitch, everything get normal, and just the rest is just enjoy the game and compete and try to win the ball game.
So what did Ross Atkins, general manager of the Blue Jays, say earlier today in a press conference? Well, he said that they remain hopeful with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., that all the doors remain open. They don't close any doors, and they do hope that they can come to an agreement, whether it's during the season or at the end of the season. Of course, he asked for $500 million, a little bit more than that as well, to stay on with the Blue Jays. Let's see what can happen. But in the meantime, let's look forward to tomorrow. 3:07 is the first pitch. Back to you.
All right, ahead of tomorrow's game and the home opener, all with CP24's Arda Zakarian. Thanks, Arda.
Thanks, Arda.
It's 5:45, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And we've got more on the breaking news we're following. Donald Trump has imposed a 25% tariff on all cars not made in the United States. We are awaiting reaction from Premier Doug Ford. We're going to take you live to Queen's Park right after this. Welcome back. We're still following big breaking news out of the Oval Office this hour. Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all cars not made in the U.S. We're going to take you live to Queen's Park now, actually, where Premier Doug Ford is speaking about this tariff. Let's listen in live.
I'm in full support of preparing retaliatory tariffs. But we want to see what he's going to do on April the 2nd. As we've seen over a number of months, it's on again, off again. And he said he wasn't going to do it till April 2nd. Well, he launched an early attack, which is not surprising. But I've asked the Prime Minister to convene a FMM call as soon as possible, and recommended early next week, possibly Monday, and discuss this with the other premiers to make sure we take a Team Canada approach to this. But I can tell you, we just aren't going to roll over. We're going to retaliate, and he's going to feel the pain from the American people. And isn't it amazing when I went down last time, and we sent our team down last week and the week before, but the markets seem to calm down. The market's already reacting. And it's going to drop. It's dropping today. The market's going to dive down on April the 2nd because there's no certainty. There's no certainty for the American people. And they're going to realize that. And I always say our number one ally are the American people. So it looks like we're back at it again. I just want to see exactly what he's preparing for April 2nd. As he says, he's doing the global tariffs around the world. In the same sentence, he says he's going to be very nice to his allies. Well, let's see how nice he's going to be. So we'll be prepared, and we'll convene the FMM, and I'll be speaking to the Prime Minister as we move forward over the next few days, as well as I spoke to him today.
Are you ready to do the electricity tariffs at this point?
Well,
export tax?
Yeah, what I want to see, I want to see where he's coming from on April the 2nd. I want to take a Team Canada approach. I do not want to hurt other provinces on that, but I can assure you one thing, we're going to make sure that we inflict as much pain as possible to the American people without inflicting pain on the Canadian population. And that's the reason we've done 2 rounds of 30 billion and 30 billion. And the last 65 billion, it will hurt. I'll be very, very frank, but I've talked to a tremendous amount of people going to events, and I'm very transparent by saying we have 2 options here. We either roll over as a country, and he runs us over 15 times and gets what he wants, or we feel a little bit of pain, and we fight like we've never fought before. I prefer the latter. I believe in fighting, and we'll have a big impact on the American people. He thinks, all he's doing is hurting the American people. He thinks the cost is going to go down for automobiles in the U.S. It's the total opposite. The costs are going to go skyrocketing. It keeps calling out countries. He's really pointing us out for the most part. Ontario, 50% of the parts within the vehicles are American. And, how do you dissect? They were showing me drawings today of all the different parts from all over the world, by the way, that goes in one vehicle. A lot are Canadian parts. A lot of Canadian companies they have plants down in the U.S. I understand they have approximately 127 plants employing over 50,000 people directly. So let's see how they can dissect it. I find it very, very difficult to believe that they can dissect every single part in an automobile by April the 2nd, or will be implemented on April the 3rd.
When you say dollar-for-dollar tariffs, does that mean Canada would implement 25% tariff on U.S. automobiles coming in?
Well, first of all, thank you, Richard. Something I really want to sit down with the rest of the premiers. I don't want to speak on behalf of all the premiers without sitting down with them and without getting into it a lot deeper with the Prime Minister. That $65 billion of tariffs that we have on the table that we can launch towards the U.S., we have to run through every tariff and minimize the pain for Canadians, maximize the pain for Americans. And I feel terrible for the Americans, but it's one person, it's President Trump, that's creating this chaos, as I call it.
Have you been having any conversations with the heads of these auto companies? Have they given Ontario any reassurance that they will remain in Ontario and not pick up stakes and move to the U.S.?
I have talked to a lot of the leaders of these auto companies. A lot changes, as you know, over a 4 or 5 day period. I'll request another meeting with all the Canadian CEOs, presidents of the auto sector, be it General Motors and Ford and Stellantis, Toyota and Honda, and I'll also speak to Volkswagen on their production facility in St. Thomas.
Premier, in your meetings with Lutnick and with the officials of the U.S. Trade Representative, was there not an agreement that there would be no surprises, there would be some sort of heads up? Did you get any indication that this was coming today, or is it impossible to get heads up when the guy making the decisions is the President of the United States?
Well, you answered my question. You're bang on 100% that we thought we'd be informed. The word "no surprises" came up in the meeting, and sure enough, well, there's a surprise. I can't predict, or I honestly believe the American administration some days can't predict what President Trump's going to say. So he's come out early now and said these are going to be implemented on April the 2nd. I always believe the day he calls, what day does he call that on April the 2nd? Liberation. Okay, so President Trump's calling it Liberation Day. I call it Termination Day for American workers. I know, President Trump likes telling people you're fired. I didn't think he meant auto workers in the U.S. when he said that.
What could this job?
Trump, though, on that,
Yes.
has repeatedly said that in the end, in the long term, this is going to be better for the U.S. economy. So what do you say to that?
Well, I don't know how he can think it's going to be better. He can't flick on a switch and create an auto plant overnight. We buy over 400% more cars than Mexico. Mexico's producing probably 300 to 400% more than we're producing. It ranges from 1.3 to 1.4 million. And Mexico's well over 3.5 million, and God only knows what sort of parts are in their cars. A lot are coming over from China and slapping that made in Mexico sticker. So we buy as many cars off the U.S. as we sell down there. And again, I do not understand for the life of me how he thinks, when you put on a 25% tariff, how Americans aren't gonna feel the pain. Because I'll encourage the Prime Minister to target American cars as well. That's what we're going to focus on. And all of a sudden, over a certain period of time, a lot of these large auto manufacturers here in Canada are stockpiling parts. So once that runs out, you'll see possibly assembly lines shut down in both countries simultaneously.
When it comes to economic stimulus, will
Yes.
that be ready on the 2nd of April, or do you think
Yes.
you have to wait? In
No,
what
I believe it'll be ready. I won't speak for the Prime Minister. He has mentioned a few numbers, and again, I'd rather him speak for the plan that he has, but we'll be ready.
What about provincially, the billions of dollars that you've promised as well for companies to draw down from? Will that be ready on April 2nd?
Well, we'll see what sectors that are hit the hardest, and we'll allocate a lot of those funds to the sectors that are hit the hardest, be it auto or anything else. And this is the tough part of negotiating with President Trump, not directly, but through Secretary Lutnick, is you don't know what's coming from day to day. You have to brace yourself, get ready, read and react. But I'm confident with all the premiers in Canada. I'm confident with the federal government right now that we'll retaliate appropriately, and we'll hit them as hard as we possibly can.
Do you think he's doing this as a really quickly in terms of the Team Canada approach? We were dealing with it in the middle of a provincial election. Now we're in the middle of a federal election, and we have to somehow respond. What is that like right now?
Well, just similar to when during my election, I was out there responding, and I expect the government of today, and who knows what happens by the end of the election, but they need to respond, and they will respond appropriately.
Do you think Trump accelerated this to change the channel on his
Quote, I believe in fighting. Live remarks from Queen's Park as Premier Doug Ford says he is in full support of retaliatory tariffs. This after U.S. President Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on autos.
Yeah, and Doug Ford says Donald Trump calls it Liberation Day. I call this Termination Day for American workers. Stay with us as we keep a close eye on this breaking news. Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is coming up next.